Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Chrissy Noem can hold her own against Dan Goldman no problem. But Chairman Mark Green comes in and slams the door on him after these ridiculous statements. You won't believe what he has to say. Let's dive in.
Is it the policy of the Department of Homeland Security now that undercover ICE agents are permitted to wear face masks when executing their official duties?
Sir, it is allowed that they can if it protecting their
Is it in the
identity is an
policies?
imperative part
Do you address
of
face masks in the
I'll have
policies?
to look and see if it's in our written policies.
Because
I'm not
it's
certain, but
quite
it's
ironic, and
No.
I agree with the administration that is trying to ban face masks from anti-Semitic protests on campus, and yet our own law enforcement are wearing face masks to hide their identities.
We are implementing the exact same policies that Joe Biden had in place for his.
That is not any policy that I was
did
aware
not
of when I
change any
worked
of
with
the
the Department of
policies.
Homeland Security.
Gentleman's time has expired. You know, I've said this before. The left has this incredible heart for the criminal. They defend the criminal. A full-throated defense of criminals over the safety of Americans and the following of the rule of law. We've even seen the defense of a congresswoman, who threw a punch at a police officer. I mean, that's unconscionable. You know, if I was a 100% politician, and I'm not, but if I was a 100% politician, I'd be happy with that. Why? Because that's exactly the reason they lost every single swing state in the recent election, the border. This full-throated defense of criminals and the punching of law enforcement in the face. It's why they lost every single swing state, and Republicans gained in almost every state more votes than we'd ever gotten before. Because the American people recognize who the good guy really is. And it ain't Tren de Agua. Or a guy who was driving 8 women, young women, through my state, and the Biden administration said, do not detain him. As I've said before, the left doesn't know a good guy from a bad guy. They street violent criminals and they want to defund ICE. That's been their mantra since I've been in this position. It's ridiculous. It's heinous. And yes, if I were a pure politician, I'd say keep going, guys. But what it does is it breaks my heart. I am a combat veteran, and I have a kindred connection to those law enforcement agencies and agents who put their ass on the line, their lives on the line for our safety. And we're fussing about whether or not the guy has a mask on to protect his identity when he's an undercover agent. I don't know how many people made an issue out of that. Give me a break. Want to cut a deal with Iran, destabilize the Middle East, punch Saudi Arabia in the face, we get an imbalance in what happens, an invasion of Israel. They don't know a good person from a bad person. That's why the American people said, we don't want them in charge. Again, if I were a pure politician, I'd say, keep going, guys. But it's a spit in the face to the men who wear that uniform. It's a charade. That's what it is. It's a charade. To say something about law enforcement and turn around and be okay with a U.S. congresswoman punching a police officer in the back. It's infuriating. Madam Secretary, you have done a remarkable job. And what's happening now is the criminals and the cartels have stopped making billions of dollars trafficking human beings into our country. Thank you for that. And the texts and tweets that I've gotten from Border Patrol and the texts and tweets I've gotten from law enforcement all across this country during this hearing support everything I'm saying. Thank you.
The whole point that he's trying to do is he's trying to play a great chess move called a fork, where if he places his piece here, if you misplay and take the piece, congratulations, you're now in a trap. You might lose your queen, you might lose a rook, you might lose something very important to your endgame. And so he's trying to lay out some bait, saying that, oh, if you take this, there's going to be no harm in this line of argument. And so what he's trying to get at is, well, if you say it's okay to wear masks, well, where was this rhetoric 5 years ago? We really could have used this. But no, Kristi Noem's not going to fall for that. And then anyone with more than 2 brain cells to rub together isn't going to look at that and go, what does this have to do with protecting personal identity here? See, we currently live in a country that has an issue with mass protesters, and it becomes an issue when they're destroying property, like, for instance, all the vandals going up and down the entirety of our collegiate system, particularly in the Northeast. And that's been a bit of a problem recently, just under the Trump administration part 2. But an even bigger problem is a little group called Antifa. If you've heard of them, you know that this group loves to make as much noise and create as much damage as they possibly can. They're currently active in trying to end something that they call Cop City down in Atlanta, which is sorely needed. They've also tried multiple little uprisings up in Portland and Seattle. Granted, that's where the little hornets' nesting grounds actually starts. And so these people all will wear masks in order to protect their identities. Well, that's actually not a bad idea. It really means that you are afraid of getting caught, and quite honestly, you need to face consequences for that. But when you are a member of law enforcement, you know what? Why don't I describe it in a better way? I currently live just outside of Atlanta, and something I noticed, because I've had a history of driving all over the state, both for campaigns and for delivering medical supplies. But I've noticed that you'll often see cop cars, personal cop cars, from another county, usually across county lines. And what that means is cops will patrol beats in different counties, making it harder for people to track them down and follow them home. It becomes more of a problem. That is one way that local law enforcement will help protect identities and people of their actual precincts. That way, the cops aren't followed home. That way their identity is less likely to be found and less likely to cause problems down the road. That's good safety precautions. And that's exactly what these cops have to do in these situations, because they need to protect their identity in an age where you can run a name through an AI if you've got the money, and you can figure out who that person is. Let's be honest, we don't live in a day where Clark Kent can get away with just putting on a pair of glasses and therefore he's not Superman. That doesn't happen anymore. Not in this technological day and age. However, what Mark Green is getting at here is something even deeper. The whole idea that Democrats are trying to stand in the way of having good border policy and actually having some standards so there could be some consequences to the terrible actions of not just ridiculous protesters over in some liberal arts college somewhere in Pennsylvania or New York. No. We're talking about protecting the border agents who are standing watch on the border, making sure cartels aren't trafficking human beings into slavery or worse, as it was the case that we discovered back in I think late 2022. We discovered just how bad things were. After all, the sound of freedom kind of ruffled a few feathers in Hollywood as well as the Democrat Party. I wonder why. So I don't blame Mark Green for getting a little bit ruffled here. He was definitely agitated because we're arguing about whether you should or shouldn't wear masks. Like he said, give me a break. This is nonsense. This is not a real issue. And instead, Dan Goldman wants to use it as a potential fork in order to hope that someone falls for this terrible bait. We live in a new day and age where people are media savvy, where we're starting to realize just how badly the scales have been tipped in favor of Democrats and mainstream media, and they're not falling for this garbage anymore. Dan Goldman should care a little bit more about what's happening on these college campuses. I believe the man is Jewish, and Mark Green even brings up Israel in his response to all this. But you know what? I don't think that's what matters. That's not what tipped the scale. Whether Iran finally gets the nuke that they so desire so they can do God knows what with that. But that's not what Americans voted for. Americans did not vote for foreign policy. They voted because they've realized that they've had a raw deal. The very people who marched in the riots of 2020 realized within a year they might have made a mistake with defunding the police. And then Democrats flooded their towns and their cities, giving blue city tax dollars to illegal migrants. Oh yeah. They poked the bear on this one. They stoked the hornet's nest, and that's why 7 of the 7 battleground states went for Trump. That's why all these areas have voted more for Republicans recently. It's starting to take effect. The idea is starting to take hold, and Democrats don't know what to do with it, so they have Dan Goldman out here arguing about masks with Kristi Noem. It's absolutely asinine. And oh, P.S., there was actually a congresswoman that was caught on camera being quite belligerent with federal officers when she tried to enter an ICE facility illegally. I almost forgot to add that one in, but I think it bears some reminder of what happens when you storm federal buildings. The Department of Homeland Security is looking to press charges. Her name, by the way, is LaMonica McIver. She is from New Jersey. She is a Democrat representative, and she is in some hot water as we speak. So, yeah, a little bit of a PS for you right there. Again, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed this segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.